At E3 earlier this year, eager Zelda fans like me were flooded with information about the next game in the series, Breath of the Wild. We got so much new content, and it was awesome. At the 2016 Game Awards, Nintendo gave us a new trailer, and at first glance, this trailer seems to show a bunch of cool new stuff. New characters, new areas, and answers to a few questions we've had. But as I look closer, it seems like this trailer was deliberately designed to mess with us. There are so many unknowns that come out of this trailer, and very, very few answers I see. So let's go through this video bit by bit to see what kind of stuff we can find. 5 seconds in. The trailer opens with one of several tapestries we see in the trailer. This whole trailer seems to follow a loose story arc, showing the birth of primitive Hyrule, the growth of civilization, and then its fall to presumably Calamity Ganon. Maybe this is the backstory of the game. Maybe some of this trailer's scenes are flashbacks, like when Calamity Ganon is destroying Hyrule, or maybe when Link has the Master Sword. We'll talk much more about those things later. 17 seconds in. The trailer's third shot suggests that the game will have seasons. We've already been promised fancy weather, but do you think we'll get seasons too? It's hard to say for sure. This autumn-themed shot is all we really have to go on, though a tiny bit more on that later. 22 seconds in. This is the trailer's first shot of a non-playable character or NPC. After Link and the Old Man, this is only the third human the public has ever seen from this game. He looks kind of like a traveler to me, suggesting that NPCs may have complex lives of their own. And there are some other details to be seen in this shot too. For example, the bridge. It's the central structure in this shot. And there's some fire on the sides of the bridge, which might signify that it was lit by somebody, maybe by this traveler. We can see another view of the bridge in the Beyond the Plateau segment at E3 of 2016, which is in the top left corner of one of the frames. The bridge is visible, but it's not terribly striking from that angle, suggesting that it's not a major landmark. On the left side of the screen is a fallen Guardian that appears to be in some kind of ruined wooden structure. Maybe the Guardian destroyed it, or maybe the structure was built around the Guardian. At about 25% of the way across the screen from the right side, we see a flag, which is to the left of the Resurrection Tower. We've seen a lot of flags that look kind of like this in trailers and other footage, and it's unclear if they signify anything other than just landmarks for the player, but we'll see several more in this trailer, and I will bring all of them up that I see. On the middle right side of the frame, we see what looks like a giant tree that's been shredded up and hollowed out. We also see something like this in the E3 2016 trailer, when Link glides off of the cliff. I doubt there's any connection, but maybe worth noting. 24 seconds in. The next shot is two humans fighting two blue bokoblins in stormy weather. At first, I thought the closer person was Link, but now I'm not so sure. It looks like Link, but his hair is different, he's carrying a big backpack which he's never needed before, and his garb would be completely new. None of these things are definitive. We've seen Link with different hair, we've seen him with different clothing, and we've seen him with different items, but I don't think it's him. To me, the most significant detail here is the sophistication of these non-playable characters. Their animations look fluid like Link's, and they appear to be pretty competent AIs. By the way, backpacks suggest that these characters may also be travelers. I don't make anything from the patterns on these two shields other than the fact that they're different from other shield emblems that we've seen. Link might be able to use these shields himself, maybe they're not restricted to NPCs. I do wonder if Link will ever have a backpack like these people. There's a stone structure in the background which looks kind of like a small jail, maybe that area from Kakariko Village in Link Between Worlds or Link to the Past, but it's hard to tell. There's also a resurrection tower far behind that in the background. I am not savvy enough to use that to pinpoint this shot's location on the world map, but maybe somebody else can. I'd imagine that these characters will win some of their fights with bokoblins, but not all of them. What happens if they run out of health? Do you think they'll die and disappear in puffs of smoke like other enemies, or will they fall to the ground later to get up? 26 seconds in. This carnival-looking tent has a giant horse's head on the top of it, though it kind of looks like a dragon to me. There are little lanterns hanging off the tent. More on lanterns later. There's an axe and a tree stump on the right side of the frame. Doesn't seem terribly significant, but maybe worth noting. We zoom in on this tent, and we see the most important part of the trailer. A sweet, cute pupper. Now we know this game will be good. We see a few other NPCs in this shot. The person on horseback has a backpack, maybe another traveler, and there are some horseshoe drawings on his saddle, which is a nice touch. There's also a white-haired person who's looking pensive on the left side of the frame. His hair is in a bun that looks kind of like one we see in an earlier tapestry in this video, and it looks like he has a paintbrush hanging from his pouch. There are lots of dead leaves on the ground here too. One could use this as evidence for seasons. Oh, there's dead leaves, that means it's autumn or winter or something. But it could also be evidence against. Look, there are no seasons and there are just dead leaves here. To me, the most frustrating thing about this particular shot is the almost illegible text on the side of the tent. The second character looks pretty clearly like an A from 6 Hylian script, but that's about as far as I could get. The first character looks like it might be a T or a J. I can't even tell how many letters there are. I tried my best to manipulate the image, change the contrast, and step through things frame by frame, but I couldn't even figure out the number of letters, let alone what the letters translated to. Maybe somebody savvier can take a stab at it. 33 seconds in. We see a little town, and for how much we see of this town, I don't notice that much from it, so maybe other people see great things from here. Some people think this is Kakariko Village. I don't have any evidence to suggest that either way. It looks like there's a Kuko on the right side of this shot. We look back on the town and see 2 people. It kind of looks like this town's entrance is visible on the left side of the screen, though it's hard to tell. I also wonder if these crops will grow or if they're purely decorative to the player. The open roofed structure on the right side of the frame seems to show another Kuko bird that looks more like a normal chicken this time. 39 seconds in. Up until this point, this trailer is fairly kind to us, but from here on out, Nintendo starts hurling significant unknowns at us, and they are unrelenting. So, in this scene, we see Link standing on a platform, watching a bird creature twirl towards the sky, and it seems that this bird is heading for a floating island. I think there is a lot more to this 6-second scene than meets the eye, and I think there is even some trickery involved, so let's break this down bit by bit. The elephant in the room here is the Master Sword, or something that looks a hell of a lot like the Master Sword. The only other time we've seen the Master Sword in this game so far is at the end of the E3 2016 trailer, where it is really worse for the wearer. So what's it doing on Link's back? Do you think he's trying to repair it? Or maybe this shot takes place before the sword was damaged? Could there be multiple Master Swords or imitations? Already the questions are pretty big, but they don't stop. So I noticed 4 details before we unpause this shot. First detail. There are gaps in the fence with little arrows, almost suggesting that one should jump off into the whirlwind. That tells me that this platform is a semi-permanent fixture, which tells me that the whirlwind is also semi-permanent. We'll talk more about this in a moment. The second of 4 things I notice is the pattern on the platform. Does it look kind of familiar? It's the exact same pattern that we see on Link's paraglider. What's the significance of that? The third thing I notice is the flag on the left side of the screen. I will mention every flag we see in this trailer, I hope, and there's another one here. Fourth, we see a light on the corner of this platform. This lantern, like the ones we've seen before in the horse tent statue thing, don't appear to be lit by any fires. Maybe they're electrical somehow. A few frames later, we see the bird creature twirling up into the sky. Perhaps worth noting that we see the apparent top of the cyclone at the end of this shot. It doesn't continue higher up into the sky. In the next shot, we see the bird, which everybody on the internet is kindly calling Falco. There are lots of things to notice about Falco. His bow looks like wings that we've seen in Hylian crests in many of the games, including this one. His scarf has a bird symbol that looks like it's in the shape of the flying island, and it's the same color as Link's blue tunic. We'll talk more about that later. His eyes are lined red, and there appears to be a single red tear falling from each eye. Kind of Sheikah-like, don't you think? Oh, and he has a sweet ponytail. We also see Cass, a bird-looking minstrel, in the other Game Awards footage that Nintendo released. Could this bird species be significant? Maybe the earlier tapestry is showing bird people, not humans. Moments later, he shoots off into the sky towards a bird-shaped airship of some kind. Before I continue, I want to note that there's no hard evidence that this shot is connected to the previous one. It's possible that the gust of wind is nowhere near the airship. We don't see the top of it in the second shot. It's heavily suggested, but I'm not too trusting because there's a continuity break in the next transition. So here's what I mean. Look at the glow we see coming from the ship. The ship has a blue glow to it in the first shot, but it's got a red glow in the second and third angles. What's going on there? I do think it's the same airship because other things do match up, but I think a lot of in-game time has passed between the first shot and the second here. I think that the trailer is trying to trick us. It's also possible that there are 2 or more different ships of the same, quote, model, but in any case, these 2 shots are not right next to each other. The ship has the same aesthetic as many of the technologies we've seen so far, most notably the Resurrection Towers. There's probably some connection here. The ship also appears to have some kind of claw, perhaps for picking things up, and you can see an underbelly. Maybe this is where things get pulled inside. I tried my best to make out the markings on the side of the ship, but I couldn't match them up with anything. Maybe somebody else can tell me whether it's text at all, or even better, what it says. This is yet another Hylian translation from this trailer that I failed. There's yet another question I think of here. Is this the mystery object we've been seeing floating in the sky since E3 2016? I think so, but I don't think there's strong evidence either way. For one, I cannot pinpoint this scene on a map anywhere. GameXplain's E3 mega analysis video, which is awesome, notes that flying mystery object is near the Snowy Mountain area and even places the object on the map. Later, I'll show a speck of evidence that we see this whirlwind platform near this location, but I am not sure. Speaking of the map, Mystery Island moves around the map a fair bit, but I'm not so sure that the bird airship does, at least in the same way. As I mentioned earlier, I think both the platform and Windgust are semi-permanent fixtures of this landscape, which means that the airship can't move much from that area. But on the other hand, it's possible that you'll shoot up into the sky and glide a distance to your destination, so who cares if this platform is fixed? Or the airship could, quote, pick you up at this spot and then just jet off. I'm also not convinced that flying mystery object is bird-shaped. When I look at other footage of the island, I don't see anything that looks like a bird or like this airship at all. That being said, there is one pretty big piece of evidence for these being the same object. They're both freaking floating islands in the sky. How many of those is this game really gonna have? 47 seconds in, we see the trailer's final tapestry showing a castle being surrounded by blue-eyed guardians. Are they attacking the castle or defending it? The castle is almost certainly Hyrule Castle. If the shape and context didn't already convince you, note the Hylian crest drawn in the middle of the castle here. 49 seconds in, we see Link fighting two guardians on horseback. There's not much new here, but it's not completely devoid of detail. For one, we've never seen Link fight two guardians at the same time before, and we also get a good look at the mysterious floating object. There is a weird-looking structure that looks kind of like a bird right below it. Perhaps this is the platform I talked about from seconds ago. 51 seconds in. I think everyone's first thought when seeing this shot was the exact same. Zelda. But before we can talk about who this person is, I want to talk about the color that she's wearing because I think that's significant. While we've seen Link wearing many different colors and armors, most of the concept art screenshots and footage we've seen show Link in the light blue champion shirt. The game's description has the following to say about the champion shirt. Quote, in ancient Hyrule, this garment could only be worn by one who had earned the respect of the Hylian royal family. End quote. We've seen this shirt on Link a lot, suggesting that he's earned the royal family's respect, though that requirement may long have since passed. While we haven't seen this shirt on anybody else, we do see the color in two other pieces of garb in this trailer. The first we've already seen on Falco's scarf, which might be significant. The second is in this shot. With that in mind, I think there are 5 possible candidates for who this person is. Option 1, this is just some random insignificant character, and Nintendo is completely messing with us. I don't think that's the case. Option 2, this is another character that we've never seen before, either new to the game or a character from past games that's not very significant. We can't rule this out, but I don't see much evidence for this. Option 3 is the obvious choice, Zelda. From what we can see, it looks like Zelda. The hair and the stride and the skin color. And this character looks to be about the same age as Link, which most Zeldas have been. This character might have been involved with royalty given the light blue clothing we talked about earlier, but her garb and pouch suggest she might also be an adventurer. Maybe she's not royalty like she is in Skyward Sword. Perhaps the most striking piece of evidence to me is just in my gut. Who did not think that is Zelda when they first saw this shot? Even if you weren't so sure upon later reflection. It just looks like Zelda. Option 4, female Link. There's evidence against this, both in the contents of this shot and in the seemingly closed book of a female protagonist in this game. But there is some weak evidence that this character will be playable. The light blue garb, the pouch, and what could be a Sheikah slate in hand. Other NPCs have sophisticated movements, which may suggest that they've programmed the game to allow the player to control humans who aren't Link. I do think the evidence for female Link is pretty thin here. Option 5, Impa. There's not a lot of evidence for this either, but it's non-zero. For one, the character seems to be holding a Sheikah slate, and Impa is a Sheikah. This character also appears to have a ring on her middle finger, as does the character in the last shot of this trailer, which looks more like Impa. We'll talk more about the evidence for that character being Impa towards the end, but spoilers, I will not have an answer for you. My hope is that we get playable Zelda. The fact that Zelda is a secondary character in her own games is sexist, and it is my biggest gripe with the series. I would love Nintendo to correct that in Breath of the Wild, and I think it would be a lot of fun. 54 seconds in, we see Evil Red Goop and Evil Red Lightning spewing from what is presumably Hyrule Castle, and this is almost certainly Calamity Ganon. It's conceivable that this is a flashback scene because Hyrule's destruction was in the past, but who really knows? This is the closest view we've ever seen of Hyrule Castle. It looks most like the version that we saw in Twilight Princess, but it's got a lot of differences, so I'm not convinced that it's the same one. 57 seconds in, we see the ruins from presumably Calamity Ganon's destruction. I'm not able to identify either of the buildings in the front of this frame, but I do see a few other things. On the left, in the foreground, we see evil goop oozing on the ground. It might be solid, but it could also be a gas. A bit above that, we see what looks like a guardian spinning its head for a few frames. It doesn't appear to be glowing any color, but we don't get a very good look at it. We also see what looks like a bridge in the distance, and a bit in front of that, we see the fountain that we're about to pan to. Finally, 1 minute in, we're almost done, and I spot 3 things in this shot. First, I'm not the first to notice that this shot looks like the central square of Twilight Princess's castle town. We see this in the fountain and also the red flags hanging from the poles. But is this the same castle town? For one, the surrounding area we saw in the previous shot has no other clear landmarks from that castle town, and it looks different in a lot of ways. There's also what looks like a ruined building right next to this fountain, which is not present in Twilight Princess. If this is the same fountain from Twilight Princess, then I have a lot of questions. Why is Ocarina of Time's Temple of Time also in this game? We've also seen Skyward Sword's goddess statues and Wind Waker's Koroks. I don't really care where this game fits in the timeline, but this shot may throw another wrench into that debate. Second, there appears to be a shrine in the background. It's glowing green, so it may not be a shrine at all, or maybe shrine's colors have changed. Third, my old favorite, I spot 2 flags in this scene. Both are on what look like castle turrets. One is on the far right of the frame, and the other is near the center of the shot in the distance. 1 minute, 5 seconds in. Sparkly Link, who knows why that is. Also, something Sheikah-like is on the left side of the frame next to him. It's hard to tell what. 1 minute and 7 seconds in. This is the final shot of the trailer. Link is kneeling down and carrying the Master Sword. It's hard to tell why he's kneeling. I initially thought he was just resting, but some other people speculate that he's bowing for royalty in front of him. But who's he kneeling next to? I don't think we have strong evidence, but this character seems to be regally dressed and is not kneeling. It could be Impa. I'm struck by the red cape and the golden braid. It could be Princess Zelda. It could even be a different incarnation of Zelda than the one we saw earlier in the trailer. It could also be none of the above. I cannot tell. Whew, there you have it. That is many of the things that I noticed from the Game Awards 2016 trailer. There were loads of questions. Who's the bird person? Is that Zelda? Why does Link have the Master Sword? Are there seasons? Etc. But at least we know one thing. There will be a cute pupper in this game. And I am certain that that will make this game great.